Hello everyone, Jen here from the Little Craft Corner, and I'm so excited to have finally reached level 3 in the New Educator certification program. And my first class is one of my favorite techniques, watercoloring. Today I'm using the Calming Cluster stamp set, which is a stamp set within New Spring Retreat. So I had already signed up for this, and when this wonderful package came, I knew I just had to use this for my first level 3 project. In the watercolor class I took, well, there are two of them actually, creative coloring with Aram and botanical watercoloring with JC. I'll admit I did blend a few of the concepts together, but this class' main focus is on creative watercoloring. But what I did learn from JC is to create a color wash with your pan set. We'll come back to that. Before you start to watercolor for the first time, it's sometimes best to heat emboss your image using an embossing powder because that will keep a buffer around your image so that when you begin watercoloring, you're not going out of the lines. You have a little bit more of a safety net. One of the things you learn when you're taking the classes is to get familiar with your watercolors. And because I'm using the 36 pan set, I created a grid of 36 spaces, and going chronologically across, I just took every little color and made a water wash. Here you're going to find me struggling to get the pan set open. It's not difficult. I just don't have nails. So please don't think this is a difficult thing to open. This is total operator error. But anyway, I, again, started with the top and then made my grid coming down to keep everything in a nice sort of grid order. And I took each little color, did the darkest concentration over to the lightest concentration, simply by just blending it out, adding water, diluting the pigment. And this really gives you an opportunity to see how many colors are within. You can also blend the colors. So this is a bit of cotton candy, coral berry, and a splash of wine. Excuse me. Yeah, I wish it was a splash of wine. You can tell I also cook. Purple wine is the pigment ink. Anyway, here's where the fun begins. Okay, so when you're going to start watercoloring, you're going to do my favorite technique, which is the wet on wet application. So I started with getting a petal and I put water on the petal, and then I got my inks and I gently added a bit of concentration with the ink, and I'm just letting gravity pull the water out across. So I continue working with each petal, just taking my time, going back and forth, adding some pigment, deciding where I want the shading to go. And this is the beauty with watercoloring. Anytime you do a project, it is always going to be different. So make it your own. What I've noticed as I progress through these classes is, you look at all the instructors and maybe they have a trick and maybe they have a specialty, but you're going to come in on this on your own. You're going to discover your own style, and that's okay. Be your own self and just keep practicing and allow the beauty of the inks and the water flow. And keep in mind that you can always, if you feel like you've added too much pigment, you can go back and remove some. That's what's great about the watercoloring, is that you can erase it a little. So right here, what I'm doing is I noticed I was putting a little bit too much on, so I just went back and, removed it. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, or so you can enjoy. But again, this is really not a difficult process. It is simply just putting water on the petal, dropping in some pigment, letting the gravity take the ink through the water, And then with your brush, you're just going to create, sculpt, arrange the pigment as you like for shadowing, and pretty much you're always going to be happy with your result. So as you can see, I jumped ahead a little bit on the card and I had finished the pink floral, and I went ahead and also worked on, I call it a little rosebud. I'm not exactly sure what the flower is, but I'm going to go with rosebud. And I was looking for orangey, a little bit pink, and this is where I pulled in a little warm sunshine and a little cotton candy and just created this really pretty wash. When you do watercolor, it will always go on a little bit darker at first, and then it will lighten as the ink dries. So again, here is where, I talk about a lot. I'm heavy-handed and I put too much watercolor on. And then you see me with my little paper towel just dabbing it away. And that's okay. Again, we're not making Picassos. We are just having fun creating a little bit of a card, a beautiful card for somebody who, believe me, will absolutely appreciate that card when they receive it in the mail because it came from your heart. So I'm just going around finishing the touches with the leaves. And for the leaves, if you are creating this card along with me or want to do a similar card, I took Forest Glades and some frayed leaf and a dab of evergreen. And this is where I did the shadowing for all of the leaves. So I have sped up the film just so that you can see the progress leaf by leaf. And again, simply I'm just going around to every little section, dropping in the pigment. And I will say the littlest areas can be, at least for me, were a little challenging. I think because they were smaller and I didn't have as much room for error if I overdid it with the water or overdid it with the pigment. But I realized that once I was finished and I walked away from the card, when I came back, the way that the card naturally dried, it was just beautiful. So I'm going to make a little comment about that as you see me continuing to watercolor. There are some methods where you let the watercolor dry naturally. Take a couple hours, do it overnight. And then there are some that once they get the watercolor down, they're a little more impatient than others and they want to get it dried quicker. So they bring their heat gun to it. Now, there are definitely times when a heat gun will do the trick to get you to the next step, especially if you're doing layering colors where you don't want the wet ink on one color blend with the wet ink on another, and then you get a muddled brown. But if you're really looking for the deepest, most purest, unaffected way that the flower has with its shadowing, you really do want to let this dry overnight, because with the heat gun, as you know, it's not just the heat, but there is a blower, and on occasion you might blow your pigment around that you've just worked so hard to mold and sculpt, and that's really not the effect that you're looking for. So I find that I have multiple projects going with watercolor cards, all in different phases, and I can continue to go back to the project at my own desire to get, to get each little level, each little phase the way that I want it. As the card comes near its completion, I had left the center. I wasn't sure what color I wanted because there's so many options. Sometimes you can do a variation of the pink, but I decided to play off the gold, and so I did drop in a little bit of warm sunshine in the center of this beautiful flower. And then I, being the slightly perfectionist that I am, I'm not overly perfection, but I noticed I wanted to go back and added a little more shading because, like I said, watercoloring will lighten as it dries. And so after a couple of hours, when I came back to the card, I noticed, all those colors that I worked so hard blending, they sort of melded into more of an orangey, and I couldn't find the pink. So I just went back in, and because it is completely dry, and because these two colors will blend beautifully, I decided to add another layer. So putting the final touches, we have our, of course, we have to do black splatters because no card is complete without that. And again, going back to the common cluster, it does come with three little sentiments, and I chose thanks because I tend to give out a lot of thank you cards. So I had already pre-cut these off camera, and there is some adhesive back. So I thought, oh, I'm going to be so cool, and I'm going to use my jewel picker, and I'm just going to pick these up like it's no trouble. And that is obviously not working because I can't even get them to work. So then I bring out the T-ruler along with the tweezers. And this is where you do want to be a little more perfect because you want your final card to have a straight sentiment. So I'm here aligning all of the little letters. And again, they were already put on an adhesive backing, so there is no glue. If you're going to do something this small, run this through a Xyron or on the Altenews sticker sheets, and that's how you're going to achieve that look. I'm cutting this down now for my A2 card, trimming off the edges, and I am so excited. I actually did this from beginning to end. Guys, I know a lot of you watch videos all the time, but this making the card is easy. Putting it together, production on a YouTube video, not so easy. So thank you so much for sticking with me through the end, and you'll see me get better. It'll take some time. Here's the card in its completion and a little bit of the close-up so you can see the shadowing and the layering, and of course those beautiful splatters. So thank you so much, and I will join you again shortly. Bye.